and we're going to be going over UFC Shanghai for this weekend. Again, first announcement is don't forget it's a very early start time, 3:30 a.m. 3 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning. So very early. I do think that's going to impact ownership to some degree. I feel as though people are going to want to get more exposure to the games that they might be able to wake up for. The fights they might be able to wake up for. So the main event card is probably going to be probably own more than it would have otherwise. That's my guess. The other thing is that in China you have a lot of guys that no one's ever heard of, and quite honestly, people like to bet on fighters that they have heard of. So the guys you've never heard of are probably going to be lower owned than they otherwise could be, and that's just the way it is. All that is to say that if you can find, a good early fight of guys you've never heard of, for example, probably going to be, that's probably where you want to go. Again, that's not comfortable, but that's probably where the math would dictate. The other thing is just in general, whenever you have these fight cards from well overseas with a lot of unknown guys is once again, I mean, the guys that you've been able to bet on before are just going to get a little bit too high owned. So I'm not saying not to play them, but you have to, take that into consideration when you make your lineups. And I apologize for the background, just all kinds of variants going on in Cheats World right now. But I am going to get this done. Also, tomorrow I am going to probably do a betting breakdown and hopefully do a lineup construction video as well because we have to get that done before before we go to sleep Friday night, because Saturday morning when everybody's asleep, that's when the card's going to begin. So let's just kind of get going over here, and we'll get into that first fight of the night, which, as I mentioned, I mean, you have two guys with names you can't pronounce who you've never heard of, pretty much. So whatever happens in this fight, it's probably going to be lower owned than it should be. So I would try to make an excuse to play this, not to mention the fact that you don't even have it inside the distance line yet. The one thing I will say is that you have Uran as a minus 140 favorite, but he's actually 8,700. So there is a little bit of money line value on Nurugway, Nurgaze. So I think that he is probably the preferred play of the two. So I'd probably get a little more overweight to him than the other guy. But I think both fighters, again, because of the unique situation of this 3 a.m. start time plus the unknowns of these guys that nobody really wants to play, I think you should probably attempt to get over the field on both of them. Do I want to play them in 20 max and below? I think the guy with the money line value, Nurgazai, certainly actually makes a lot of sense. And I do think optimizers are going to kind of pick him up, and people might actually X him out because it's an early fight. I don't know. So right off the bat, kind of a weird play, but I think that this first fight is pretty live in pretty much all formats. But Nurgaze would be my preferred play because of that money line value. There is no real inside the distance line to speak of. It's under 2.5, which is actually pretty reasonable. So, yeah, I mean, why not? Next fight, you have Long Zhao versus Sun Yung Yu, and it's a pick'em fight, but it's a lot different from a DFS perspective because, again, when it comes to win condition, this is really what you want to look for in when you're playing DFS for UFC. It's not necessarily who's going to win, but what they're going to score if they do win. And you look at the inside the distance lines here, and neither one has a good inside the distance line. You have both of them like plus 415 inside the distance. But the difference is that Su Yung Yu is going to be going for just a million takedowns. That's just kind of his style, where Long Zhao is probably going to try to keep it on the feet. So the idea that, it's likely that neither of them finish. So who's going to score well in a decision? And that's going to be Su Yung Yu. So Su Yung Yu of these two fighters certainly has the more upside, given the lack of an inside the distance distance line, because of his takedown upside. So again, right out of the gate, I would say that again, you have 4 guys, you've never heard of any of them, or no one has, and nobody really wants to play these first 2 fights because it's 3 a.m. And if you want to get started by just playing Sun Yong Yu at, really, really good price, 8,300, and Nurzaguai at 7,500, I mean, that's gonna it's gonna get you off to a good start whether you watch the fights or not. Okay, Weston Wilson versus Yisha. I mean, this is one of several fights with a really, really big inside the distance line. I mean, as a matter of fact, Yisha is minus 1,200 to win, and I think he's minus 800 inside the distance. We'll look at it. Actually, no, he's about that, minus 600 inside the distance. I mean, the problem is he's 9,900, and unfortunately, the way pricing works in UFC, I mean, I could argue that no one could be 9,900 ever. I joked about this when I was analyzing a $9,700 or $9,800 fighter a few weeks ago, but I would bet that if like John Jones was fighting me and he was 9,900, he'd probably be a bad play. You know what I mean? The only reason I say that is because, well, maybe not, but only because for 9,900 to get there, a couple of things have to happen. One or both. One is that you get a quick win bonus, really. So you got to finish the fight in a minute, unless you have an incredible amount of takedown upside, which you don't have here anyway. And in addition to that, you're going to need some cheap underdogs to win anyway. So it's very, very difficult for a $9,900 fighter, just the way the numbers work to get there. So I wouldn't play him. I mean, if I get to him by accident in GPPs with 150 max or anything like that, okay. But I can't even imagine a world where a $9,900 fighter would be playable, really, unless you had, one of those $7,300 mispriced fighters that, let's say, a $7,300 fighter got a replacement fighter, and all of a sudden he was 6-1 favorite or something like that. Then you could play the 9,900 because you pair him with the 7,300, and it's the same as basically playing 2 8,600s or whatever. So I'm kind of off of both these guys. Wilson doesn't win often enough, and Yisha doesn't score well enough given his price tag. So probably pass. Michel Pereira versus Kyle Daukaus. This is one that people are going to play. You want to know why? Because people have played these guys before, and they've played both sides of this, and you can make a case for either of them. And you look at the inside the distance line, it's actually pretty strong. You have Pereira inside is, about minus 110 or something close to it. Maybe plus 105 or something like that. And at his price at 9,200, it's a little light. I mean, it's not great. It's not terrible. So I would consider him playable. But then when you add in the fact that people have heard of him before, they played him before, I think he's going to get a little bit too highly owned. That's what I think. So for me, I actually prefer the Daukaus side of this fight. If I had to pick one, which I don't. Because listen, Daukaus was kind of dropped by the UFC, and he's getting a second chance. I mean, I think these two guys are coming into this with like sort of different motivations. You have Pereira coming in saying, oh my God, I just got dusted by Fluffy. I put on a miserable performance to Abu, and now they're shipping me off to freaking China. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how pumped is he for this? And on the other hand, you have Daukaus, who was basically on his ass, and they're giving him another chance to the UFC. I mean, he is like hyper motivated here. So I think that if you had to pick a guy that you're going to get your best effort from, it's going to be Daukaus. And I think that might be worth that might tip the scale. So I do think Daukaus at 7K is a very, very strong underdog here. And I would include him in pretty much all formats, whether it be single entry, 20 max, or whatever. All right, Rong Zhu versus Austin Hubbard. Okay, similar type of thing with respect to motivation and where you're going to get your best effort from and something like that. First of all, with respect to the money line, the inside the distance line, I mean, this does not look like a particularly good fight. You have Zhu Rong, who you look at his, whatchamacallit, you have Zhu Rong inside the distance at plus like 260 or something like that, which is just awful of a fighter of his price tag, that being 9,100. And then on the other hand, you have Austin Hubbard, who just does no damage ever. So you have these two guys. I think that there is upside. It would be on the Rong Zhu side. I mean, because again, you think about it in terms of motivation. You have Austin Hubbard. Listen, he's the consummate professional, right? I mean, he'll go where they tell him to, and they're like, okay, dude, we We got all these Chinese fighters fighting in China. We need you to come in there. So he's going to fly 12,000 miles to freaking China, Austin Hubbard, to kind of put on a low volume, attempt. I mean, listen, he's not going to try. But then you got Rong Zhu, who's fighting in front of his home fans. He's 24 years old with like 100 fights. The guy's a freaking machine, So I think that if there's upside in this fight, it would be Rong Zhu. And I will say this, that given his inside the distance line and given, all these other fighters that have big inside the distance line, he's going to be really, really unowned. So I think that in big GPPs, I think you could take shots with him. I don't know if I could ever get to Hubbard because, first of all, he doesn't look great anyway, and his opponent, Rong Zhu, is not going to be particularly popular. So those things kind of combine to make him sort of unplayable. So I think that Rong Zhu is kind of a good kind of contrarian play here, and I feel that Hubbard is probably as close to a fade as you can get. All right, so we have like a bunch of fights in a row. Not a bunch of fights in a row. There are several fights that kind of remind me of each other. This is one of them. So you have Lonnie Kavanaugh versus Charles Johnson. And as we'll get to later, we'll get to Borjas versus Sumaderji. They both are very similar to me in that you have fights that rate to be decisions and rate to be, striking matches. So from a DFS perspective, the only way these things get there is on volume. And the other thing they all have in common is they have underdogs that people really want to play. People love playing Charles Johnson. He always, what do they say, fights for your dollar. He's never out of it. And both him and Borjas, and we'll get to him in a minute, they both have a very common kind of good loss on their record. Well, not even a good loss against Joshua Van. I mean, Charles Johnson beat Joshua Van. He knocked him out. And Joshua Van might be the best fighter in the world right now. Maybe a little hyperbole, but Joshua Van is freaking incredible. And for Charles Johnson to beat him in like the third round, are you kidding me? And people remember that. So people are going to want to play Charles Johnson. And Kevin Borjas, he actually dropped Joshua Van in the first round or whatever it is. So so Joshua Van came back to get him, but Borjas looks good too. So both of these kind of underdogs, are going to be played a little bit. They don't really have too much upside, but again, nothing wrong with a $7,600 winner. But I don't know. You have a 12-fight card with 2 5-round fights. I think you got to get a little more greedy than just taking the wins, So anyway, Charles Johnson, he gets off to slow starts. That's not good for DFS normally, And then you have Lonnie Kavanaugh, who he's got some very credible opponents here. He beat Ochoa. He beat DeSantos. These are 2 pretty good wins here. They're not really particularly high scoring, but you do have 4 takedowns from Lonnie Kavanaugh against Dos Santos. And one thing you sometimes can do is take Charles Johnson down a lot. So I guess if I had to, maybe Kavanaugh is a kind of a weirdly contrarian play, hoping that, people take Charles Johnson a little bit too much. I don't know. That's probably my opinion on there. And again, 8,800 it seems like an awfully big price to pay for his inside the distance line, but I don't know. Maybe he gets the wrestling shoes going. We'll see. Okay. So here I have a kind of a funny take here. So Gage Young versus Mahashate. My first comment is that Mahashate sucks. That's a very highly analytical term. He got the one flash knockout over Garcia, which was actually quite amazing. But he's a pure striker. Doesn't really do much. I mean, he's low. I don't know. He's kind of low volume. They love him over there, so they keep giving him these fights. He has a win over Benitez, I suppose. But if anybody wanted to try to wrestle him, I bet you they could do it. Now, the thing about the Gage Young, so I want to highlight his last fight against Evan Elder. First of all, from a vibes perspective, I couldn't expect anybody to expect Young to beat his elders. You know what I mean? You always have to respect your elders, and the Youngs of the world, always seem to have a problem with not respecting their elders. So seeing Elder beat Young in that respect is not so hard to look at, what's your word, literally, but not to mention the fact that that Gage Young is kind of Evan Elder's, honestly, his protege, or he trains with him or whatever. And he took that fight against Evan Elder on like 2 days' notice or something like that. So he actually performed kind of reasonably there. So I actually like Gage Young in this spot. I think that the price is right. And as we talk about a lot, these mid-range price tags, you have to give a little bit more credit to anyway. So I like Gage Young here. I think that he's a very, very strong mid-range play. I think if anybody is going to take more ownership in this fight, it's going to be Mahashate. Because, again, people are used to playing him. He's the Chinese fighter that people are actually used to playing. So I think Gage Young is going to be kind of sneaky here. So I actually do like that. Nurajai versus Kiefer Crosby. What do you want me to say? I mean, Nurajai has got an amazing inside the distance line. What is it? Minus 350, probably, right? Let's see. Inside the distance, minus 300. I bet he's like probably minus 110 round one. Yeah, right about that. So he's a strong play. I mean, what else can I say? So Nurajai, round one, certainly makes a lot of sense. And so here's the thing. Do you want to play Kiefer Crosby? Kiefer Crosby, if he wins, I'm pretty sure it's going to be by finish. And how often is he going to win? I don't know. It looks like about 20% of the time. Is Kiefer Crosby going to be 20% owned? Probably not. So I know that's not exactly the way to look at it, but why not? I think Kiefer Crosby, you get leverage against someone who's going to look good on the sheet, so to speak. So I think that he's a pretty reasonable punt. And when he wins, he's winning. You know what I mean? Like he'll catch it if he catches it. Probably won't, but that 20% is a big deal. And we'll get to another example of that very shortly. I already sort of talked about the well, not really, but conceptually, the Sumaderji Kevin Borjas fight. I don't see too much else to say. And you know what I mean? It's a striking battle. Neither of these guys are going for takedowns, and the inside the distance line stinks. Both of them are plus 375. So I can't quite imagine either of these guys looking good from an upside perspective. But in reality, people are going to play Borjas. They're used to him. They've played him before. He's from Peru. He'll fight for your money, all that good stuff. And he had the good performance sort of against Van. So people are going to play him. So does that mean I want to play Maderji? I actually prefer Kavanaugh to Maderji just because at least Kavanaugh's got that takedown upside, if it goes his way. I don't think Maderji really has that. I think if Maderji wins, I don't think there are too many variations where he scores well. So I think this fight's probably as close to a pass as you can get. Okay, so now we get to the last three fights, which are probably the most going to be the most watched. They're the latest in the card. People are going to be awake. And the first one is Sergey Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. So Sergey Pavlovich is sort of my hero. When he beat Curtis Blades, I won like $83,000 that night. I had both him and Blades in the main event against each other. It was a really weird fight that happened a couple of fights before. Bruno Silva got a knockout, which he may have not deserved or something like that. And in any case, it ended up putting me in that position. And kudos to Pavlovich for getting that done in fine style. I won the most because he got there. Then after that, I mean, he's kind of fought some tough customers. You know what I mean? He lost to Tom Aspinall like everybody else has in one round, and then he lost to Anthony to Volkov, who's amazing also. So he hasn't really gotten a shot. But then in his last fight, he was against Sergey Spivak, and he ended up like winning a very uncharacteristic decision. Not Spivak, sorry. Against Jair Rosenstruck. A pretty uncharacteristic decision. Nobody was really expecting that. I think we might have done that, though. I might have. That sounds like something I would have done. Played him by decision there. Maybe I did. But I don't. I'm not particularly a big fan of that. But look, the fact that he was able to win by decision, I actually do think is sort of a positive. And then you have Waldo Cortez Acosta, who is kind of coming from a different angle, right? So you have Pavlovich, who has like shots against like these monsters. He's kind of coming down a little bit in his competition. And then Cortez has been really, really performing well. and now he's kind of moving up in competition. So he has kind of, I guess, more of an upward trajectory. You know what I mean? Like here you had him against Bandera, Chase Sherman, the worst of the worst, Bresky, the worst of the worst, a 100-year-old Arlovsky. And then he had that big win as a dog against Spain, where he showed really good fight IQ, going for all the takedowns. And then he's kind of off to the races, like two-round KO over Ryan Spann. Then he beat Spivak in a third-round decision. People expected Spivak to get a bunch of takedowns on him and to own him in that way, but no such luck. Cortez Acosta was really, really good. So we get to this fight here. The two are kind of going in different directions, I think. And it's the question, again, of whether you want to give Pavlovich the credit for having lost to those monsters like that, and in spite of the fact that his last performance wasn't so great. And do you want to punish Acosta for beating, not the same level of competition? Well, we'll get to that. But when we first look at the numbers, I mean, it's obvious that Pavlovich looks like a good play from DFS, because inside the distance, he's almost, about minus 110. And the good thing about Pavlovich is a lot of his, if he is going to get a big KO, it might be in the first round, but his first round KO prop isn't so great. It's like plus 240. And that's actually not as good as some of these others. So he's fine. I think he's going to get probably a little bit too highly owned because of his spot in the card. And I think he's going to get highly owned because of his, because of his name value sort of, and the fact that he's fought all these monsters. So when you have a situation like that, you do have to consider the other side of this. So Waldo Cortez Acosta from a upside perspective certainly doesn't look great, right? I mean, he's inside the distance line is like plus 600 or something like that. And here's a question: does he have takedown upside? But I don't know. I mean, because he was able to, read the program, right, and get takedowns on Robespierre, whatever his name is. Everybody knew that that's what you were supposed to do, and he did it. Does that mean he's a good wrestler? I don't know. Does that mean he's going to go for takedowns against Pavlovich? I don't know, but he definitely, certainly, I think he could. So he's got that going for him. But overall, his upside isn't so great. But I think that the combination of Pavlovich maybe being on the wrong, path, and a little too much name value, maybe a little too much ownership, I think that Acosta is probably the preferred play here. I actually think that Costa is pretty live for a knockout of his own here. When we get to the betting breakdown, we'll I'll probably be betting something like that. So I actually prefer the Acosta side here pretty aggressively, actually. He does represent pretty much everything that you want. I mean, he's got not quite everything. I mean, because his upside in and of itself is not great, but he's fighting a guy that I think is pretty vulnerable from an ownership perspective, pretty vulnerable from a trajectory perspective. And I don't know. I kind of like Acosta here. So then you're at these two main events, these two 5-round fights, and you couldn't have two different fights, okay? So the favorites in both these fights rate to win in completely different ways, and one of them is more likely to benefit from the 5-round fight than the other. Okay, so let's start with this. So you have Aljamain Sterling. I mean, he is exactly the guy who you want to play in 5-round fights, okay? Because on the feet, he can put up volume, but on the mat, he could put up takedowns. He can also garner a ton of control time, and in addition to that, he can get some strikes while on the ground too. So those types of things really add up to a possibility of an extraordinarily strong score. So I think he is very, very live here at his price. I don't think that's going to be a particularly hot take, but yeah, that is what it is. And Brian Ortega, the only reason I kind of like him is just because I think Sterling's going to be highly owned. Hey, Jill, can you do me a favor? Can you close that door for me? Yeah. Thanks. See you later. See you later. Sorry about that. So, yeah. So, I think Ortega's live as a leverage play. I don't really see too much else. He doesn't put up a lot of volume. He's basically finish. I don't say finish or bust, but it seems that way. And you watch him get like some 3rd or 4th round submission and score 70 points. So I I kind of like Sterling here, but again, you have 2 5-round fights. What are you going to do? You're going to play them both at high ownership? I don't know, maybe. And then in the main event, I mean, you have the exact opposite. You have a fight that you have Min Jin Yang, who doesn't need the 5 rounds. You know, his upside is going to come from it not going 5 rounds. And likewise, Johnny Walker. I mean, he doesn't need the 5 rounds either. I mean, the only way that this fight is going to finish. That's just the way it's going to be. So what we have here, unfortunately, is doing something you guys really don't want to do. So here's the reality. Well, go to the perception and the reality. Here's the perception. So Min Ying Zhang's a freaking monster, and he is. I mean, you look at his record. I mean, he's got like 7 straight like first round KO wins. I mean, like how do you stop this freight train? You know what I mean? And not only that, but it's not just that he's getting the first round wins. He's going for the ground and pound. He's going for the elbows. He's going for the throat, so to speak. You know, so he's not only got upside to just get a knockdown and a win, but it's got a knockdown and 75 significant strikes in a win. So he's got like this 130-point round 1 upside that some guys don't have. So he's going to look like an insanely good play, and not to mention the fact that it's in China, that it's a hashtag setup fight. They're sending Johnny Walker in there to take one for the team, and Min Jin Yang is going to come out there and throttle him. Okay, yeah, it's true, and he's got the 130-point upside, and you certainly have to play him. But here's the reality that no one really is going to want to hear. I mean, I said this last week; it just didn't make a difference. But whether you like it or not, like Johnny Walker wins this fight about 25% of the time. Okay, I know you're like staring at it. How is that possible? All the things you just said. It doesn't matter what I just said. The fact is that Min Jin Yang's about a 3-1 favorite, which means he loses the fight 25% of the time. And so what that means is that 25% of the time, Johnny Walker gets a big score against the most popular fighter on the slate at probably 20% ownership. So you're just going to have to play him. I know you don't want to, and I know it sucks, and I know it's a fixed fight, and I'm aware that Min Jin Yang's going to knock him out in the first round, but that only happens 75% of the time. And you have to account for the 25% of the time it does not happen. So you are going to have to play both sides of this. Listen, you don't have to. This is the United States of America. Last I checked, you don't have to do anything. But if you're going to be true to DFS, and you're going to have to consider playing the Johnny Walker side of this, just the way it is. Here's another way to look at it. The times that Min Jin Yang wins, how often does he make the optimal? Most of the time, but not all of the time. I mean, there are variations where these $9,100 guys outscore him. You know what I mean? But the time that Johnny Walker wins, ooh, that's going to be rough. It's going to be rough to keep him off your ass. You know what I mean? If you don't have Johnny Walker and he wins, you're going to be asking for it. So I like both sides of this fight, and that's the way it's going to be. All right, so Friday, well, tomorrow, I'm going to try to do both. I'm going to try to do a betting breakdown, and I'm also going to try to do a lineup construction video. I think it'll be a good card. I really do. I'm not going to be able to wake up for the first part of it, but I'll definitely wake up for the second part. Because you want to know why? I'll have to be up to sweat my League of Legends lineups, which started about the same time. All right, that is going to do it. Thanks, All-Star, as usual, for showing up. Thanks, YS, whatever that your name is, 24. And you like this stuff, join and subscribe to TrueDFS.com, and you'll get more of this stuff. And that